A heartfelt appreciation to Argus the cat for granting permission to narrate this story. Be sure to find their details in the description below. Without further ado, let's delve into the tale. Freyshino was a planet with a suddenly interesting position on the galactic stage. For one thing, most of its residents had started using the human-introduced abbreviation of Quina for the name. Many of them talked about feeling an emotional attachment to what they called the Cockney feel of the word, despite being millions of kilometers away from anything that had ever resembled Europe. For another thing, it was one of the first multi-species colonies to have a predominantly human government, and that meant that it was the first multi-species colony to have a police force. Every other species simply used their military for heavy police action, and private legal firms authorized to use force for day-to-day affairs. The idea of a dedicated enforcement branch was simply not something that was used in the galaxy. It had caused a hell of a stir when it was introduced. But after a few dozen press briefings, Chief Matherson was allowed to get down to the job of actually providing competent, dedicated police work to 2.5 million sentients. And Matherson and his boys did a good job. Before the year was out, there was an almost 90% cut in petitions to the government for retribution, barely any complaints of excessive force, and a harsh decline in traffic deaths. That last one also came as a surprise to the galactic community, which had, in general, assumed that if someone was going to get into a vehicle, they were going to obey the rules of the road. Somehow, that oh-so-human attitude of if I break the rules this one time, it's not a big deal. No one else is breaking the rules, actually was universal. No one had the sociology studies to back it up like we did, though. And now we could add the numbers of Quina's dwindling traffic disasters to that data pile. The problem, as far as most people were concerned, was that the police force was almost entirely human. Up until today, and this press briefing, it had been entirely human. But the distress from the people of the galaxy came from two directions on this fact. For humanity who remembered a history of problems, of police power gone out of control, and issues of race even among a single species that had sparked everything from debates to riots, the idea of a mono-species police force was abhorrent. We'd made mistakes, and we sure as hell weren't going to make them again. For everyone else, the problem was that they tended to not have as strict of a barrier between civilian and military as we did, and that made wars iffy. They used their military as police. And so, depressingly, when a species went to war with another, the enforcement branch of the military on any multi-species planet quickly became a tool of oppression and brutality toward the civilians of their enemies. That was simply the way it was, and so it was taken for granted that humanity would behave the same way. But more than that, civilians to most of galactic culture seemed to be simply people who weren't armed enough to participate in wars, and oftentimes multi-species colonies would have problems with riots and mob actions during larger-scale conflicts. When Earth and Boar, homeworld of the Boar, went to war, there were more than a few headlines keeping tabs on Quina's peacekeepers. Over the 3 months that the minor conflict lasted, though, everyone, especially the reporters fishing for a story, were surprised to find that not only did the Boar population not receive any kind of oppressive treatment, but the number of traffic tickets issued to them actually went down. As Matherson told the reporters then, they're all so nervous of us that they're driving 10 Ks under the limit. I appreciate the safety boost, but please, you're holding up traffic. Today, though, marked 3 events. 1, this press briefing that Matherson was dreading. 2, the declaration of war by the Boar, one of the biggest populations on Quina, against the HFY, one of the other biggest populations on Quina. And 3, the induction of several new members of the force, 2 of whom would be the first non-human officers that Quina had seen. Naturally, they were Boar and Huggy, because, Matherson thought, if life were simple, his job would be too easy, and the universe probably wouldn't go for that if he pitched the idea. The press room was packed with reporters, many of whom he didn't recognize, which meant off-world attention, which meant a few dumb questions, again. As he walked in, he nodded to the 2 fresh officers sitting behind the podium, both dressed in their fresh-pressed uniforms. Taking the podium, ignoring the camera flashes and few dozen hands or hand-like things in the air, Matherson spoke. Okay, folks, before I start, just a few quick points. No, I am not planning on retiring over this. No, I am not planning a compliance action against either the Boar or HFY populations. No, I am not a crazed racist in a position of ultimate power. Yes, I actually would like more power. Maybe a minibar in my office. Call your senators on that one, people. And no, I will not be giving favorable treatment to the local reporters who know better than to ask this, and are all quietly sitting at the back laughing at you. Now, hands down if I covered your question, and let's get this started. A depressing number of hands went down. The reporters in the back snickered. Matherson was getting too good at this. You in the front, he called out. A small slug-looking creature shuffled out of the folding chairs it had occupied to rise up and ask a question in a wheezy accent. Will the new war be causing you to undo the hiring of your newest recruits? Cutting right to it, huh? No. The short answer caused a bit of a pause from the press. After a few breaths to make sure that Matherson wasn't going to continue, the reporter asked, "Why not?" Short answer, they went through the academy, graduated top of their class. Put in the work, earned the right to test to drive that uniform. Long answer, "You know what, you two, come up here." The two freshly minted officers stepped up and approached, one at a low four-legged stance, the other bipedal and towering over the human. "This is Casa Hund, 5th of War. This is Demish. As of tomorrow, they'll both be working the District 5 beat, which means interacting with civilians of over 6 species, including their own. Demish, why don't you tell the reporters why you're going to be an excellent officer?" The scaled alien looked out over the now silent briefing room as Matherson stepped back to give him the podium, shuddering a bit as he took a deep breath. His training had prepared him for a lot of things, but not being put on the spot like this. But he thought to what he wanted, what had brought him here. "I wish to be what they have been for us." There was the sound of cameras snapping, archaic pens on pads that reporters across the universe never gave up. He found his words and started speaking more firmly. "I have lived here my whole life. I remember when the humans came to power, and I remember the fear of them installing their police. And I remember the first time I met one of them, and they helped me recover my stolen cred chip. No judgment, no demanding bribes, no harassment. They simply helped, because that is what they do. That is what I wish to do. I wish to be the one that can be relied upon to keep you safe." He took another breath, now speaking with more conviction. I wish to be that kind of hero of the home, of my home." Matherson nodded, ignoring the press's reactions, ignoring how much he wanted to pat the new kid on the back. Gesturing to the other officer, he asked loud enough for the mic to pick it up, "And you, Casa? Why am I not gonna fire you?" Stepping up, Casa started speaking at once. He knew a bit about Matherson from the stories, so he had been preparing his words, grateful that he was called upon second. "When I was military, I believed, as many of my species believe, that strength and power are what give one the right to rule. To own, to live well, to succeed. It was only after the war, after living here in the years afterward, that I began to believe otherwise. I joined the academy still thinking that the right to enforce the law would give me the power that would make me happy. But it was there that I met an instructor that finally pushed me to change. One day, after an ethics debate in class, he left us with a single thought. Not even one to be debated, but simply what he believed, with all his heart. That strength is what enables us, as the police, to serve the people. Might, he told us, does not make right. Might is what we need to create right. When I was military, I had a duty, and in losing the war, I lost that sense of purpose. But now, here, I feel as though there is something much more meaningful than governments battling over land or resources. There are people who rely on me, and my might will not fail them." Matherson stepped back up again, motioning the two officers to stay. "All right, one more question before I give you all some good pictures of me pinning insignia on these two. You, on the left." The reporter, a local who Matherson counted on to give him the easy ones from time to time, asked with almost no hesitation, "How do you feel that the ongoing war will affect how the public reacts? How they see the new officers?" Matherson opened the small pine box he'd brought, drawing two fresh insignia. Turning first to the officer on his left, then right, he affixed them right above the right breast before looking back up at the assembled crowd of news agencies. In his best casual voice, he said, "From these two, all the people are going to see is the blue." You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like on our channel. And for every comment that comments I enjoyed this story, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.